everyone. How is it going? Happy Monday evening. Glad to see you all here. We're excited to be here. We got me, we got the doctors, we got a very special guest to talk all things comics. There's a Cowboys game in an hour and 10 minutes, so we're going to be quick. Corey, punch it. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome into the Living Force podcast. Oh, it's so good to be here. I never get tired of that theme. I don't. I'm one of your hosts, Eric Eilerson, and joining me tonight to talk all about great things Star Wars comics are the doctors. We start off with Dr. Corey Helton. Hello, my friend.
What's up? What's up? How are you guys doing?
Doing good. You're pulling double duty tonight, aren't you?
I am. I am the cameraman and the sometimes having things to say man, but I don't really read the comics, so less often than that usual man.
Well, thrilling intro that is. We'll see if Dr. Charles Hankel can top that. How you doing, my dude?
I'm good, man. I'm ready to pull double duty as well. Sometimes tonight I will smile. Sometimes I will nod. Sometimes I might even do both. So keep an eye out.
Oh, man, be still my beating heart. Well, joining that excitement is the lovely and talented video host extraordinaire, Jake Ruddle. Welcome.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
Fantastic.
Oh, going better now that you're here, dude.
Look
So
at
glad
this
to have
video.
you.
Oh my
No,
God.
I'm excited.
It's
Yeah,
so pretty.
yeah. It's a lot of time. I was starting to rearrange them the other day because I was anticipating this, but I just kind of got lost in it all, and it's just all goes together.
Well, I'm
So.
so glad to see it. If y'all are listening on audio, Jake is sitting in front of a beautifully lit, like brick wall backing, and there's bookshelves with figures. If you watch the Utini YouTube channel, you have seen Jake's studio. Jake has done a bunch of our guides, reviews. You're also molding the minds of America. Isn't that right?
I
think that's
am.
what you do?
I am teacher by day, Star Wars extraordinaire by night, or try to be extraordinaire. I mentioned the other day, I was like, has anyone read the masterpiece of The Revenge of the Sith? And they were just kind of like, are you talking about the movie? And I'm like, no, there's a book. So I said, we might have to go in and do some Star Wars reading in class, but only thing on bonus points.
Man, if only we all had that teacher, right?
Oh my God. I'm
But-
just picturing you aggressively writing Darth Plagueis in chalk on like a blackboard, even though I know you don't have a blackboard.
Actually
Be
did
on
in my last
Blackboard.
school. Some schools still do have a chalkboard, which it's like they
Really?
asked me, they were like, do you want a whiteboard? And I was like, no, like there's something very nostalgic about having the chalkboard, and I could look at a student and be like, go bang these erasers out. And, technically we can't
is this,
give grades for
Matilda?
behavior. It could be. It could be. I forgot about that.
If you are a good person like Jake's students or a bad person like Jake's eraser clapper students, you are welcome regardless here. If this is your first time joining us, hey, everybody. We are the Living Force, the official podcast of Utini.com. We do a live Twitch show every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern time. The audio podcast of this is... God, I almost got it. I was on a good roll and I messed it up. The audio version of this podcast is released. There we go. Thursdays for our patrons, Fridays for everybody on various podcast platforms. Welcome in. I'm glad to see you. As we said, today we are going to be talking about Star Wars comics. Jake did an amazing video recently on the Utini YouTube channel with the ultimate guide to comics. So we're going to catch everybody up on what's been going on. Look ahead towards 2021, which is going to have a lot of great comics news. But before we get there, a couple of news things we want to go over. We all know that the High Republic is coming soon. We've talked about it on this show a lot. It's the biggest thing in Star Wars publishing possibly ever. And this past week, NetGalley, which is a digital preview reading site, I guess, like for a lot of digital readers and reviewers, you can go on NetGalley. It's how you get digital copies of books. They randomly put up a sampler of 2 High Republic titles of A Test of Courage and Into the Dark. Did you guys see this? Did you hear about this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Because of you.
Yes, that's right. And everybody was
Well-
talking about it on the team, so I mean that was kind of a big deal. But things just like kind of sneak into NetGalley. I don't know how that really works, how they decide what things are going to go to NetGalley, but they really just kind of sneak in there.
It is a crazy little world, but if you are on NetGalley or have a profile on there, I would highly suggest you go check it out because, guys, this wasn't just like, 10 pages here, 10 pages there. This was 40 pages of each book, of Claudia Gray's book and Justina Ireland's High Republic book. It's like 3 chapters of each. It was insane.
That's pretty crazy. Yeah, back in at Celebration last year when I went to that, the Del Rey booth had some of the preview copies of like what is it called, previews, whatever it says. It looks
The
interesting.
sampler.
Yeah, the sampler, right. They had the hardbound, the paperback samplers they were kind of handing out and stuff. And I picked one up. I might have it around here somewhere. That has a couple chapters of various books that were released that year. It's kind of interesting if they do that. I don't know why more people don't get them. I guess
Have they done one? I feel like they haven't done one in a while because you used to be able to get them on Amazon for free, like on your Kindle.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. Especially with something this high profile, to push something this much amount of free content. I think honestly, it shows how confident they are in this publishing line. Put out 3 chapters of each book. We already got chapter 1 of Light of the Jedi and IGN 2 months ago. They're putting preview pages out for High Republic #1. Dang.
Yeah.
So stoked. Just wanted to make you all aware of that. I did read the previews of both. They're really good. Shocker. So you heard it here first. Claudia Gray wrote more good Star Wars. Who'da thunk? But definitely go to NetGalley, check those out. And of course, they are going to be coming out at the beginning of next year. 2 teases for later on in the show, because again, we switched up our format to put our main stuff more in the beginning of the show. At the end of the show, we have a new Patreon show to announce and a Patreon event we're going to announce. But that's all I'm going to tell you right now. That's it. That's all you get. You get a little sampler, if you will. Just like a NetGalley sampler. Look at that. Look at that thematic tying in, guys. It's so natural. Stick around to the end of the show. We got a couple of announcements to talk about. Corey, would you like to tackle the Patreon updates, though? With our new patron and patron of the week.
I would love to. Yeah, so we have Patreon is a really big part of what we do here. It helps support the show, and we try to do a lot of really cool, fun stuff for our patrons. We have Tim pointed out to me, guys, last week that we have, when we start doing Bounty Hunt again, we're going to have a show literally released every single day on Patreon. It's pretty ridiculous. Like $5 gets you a whole week's worth of content. It's kind of nuts, actually. So our Patreon is jam-packed with all kinds of cool stuff. We do behind-the-scenes look. We do exclusive merch. If you haven't seen that already, it's at patreon.com/Utini. And, we have some cool stuff coming up. Firstly, we do have a new patron this week. Lauren Trout is a new patron. Yes, I did make a fish joke when we introduced you to the team. It was fantastic.
Got the screen caps.
I can't remember what I said. I think I said, "What a catch!"
Yes, you did.
Yes, it was.
And I said, "Ha."
That's right. And then, secondly, we do have a Night at the Opera coming up this month, which looks pretty fun. So that's going to be really cool. We're going to talk more about that later. But I think the biggest thing I want to highlight right now is our Patron of the Week. Every single week we do we highlight a special member of our Patreon community. And this week is none other than the show's own Matt Davenport. So he's got a really cool video for you guys. So let me cue that up here, and we will do it.
Hi, I'm actor Troy McClure. You might remember me from some Utini podcasts like The Queen's Fashion and Pew Pew, ranking the laser blasts of Star Wars. Hello there, Star Wars fans. I'm Matt Davenport. Yes, that Matt Davenport that you hear at the end of every Living Force podcast is read by Eric Eilerson because he's contractually obligated to do so. My connection to the Force started in the summer of '77 with the release of Star Wars. After watching the movie over and over in the theater, I couldn't get enough, and that led me to reading everything I could get my hands on The novel adaptation, Starlog Magazine, Dynamite Magazine, the comics. Back in my day, we didn't have the Twitter net to force feed us 24 hours a day. Now, I lived through the dark times, a period of about 1986 through 1991, when it seemed like the franchise had run out of gas. It was spotting Star Wars Dark Empire from Dark Horse Comics and Zahn's Heir to the Empire that reignited the spark that burned down the dark times. Now, my question for the Utini team is, what Star Wars character, Legends or EU, would best play you do your job IRL? And Corey and Charles, you can't choose 21B or FX7. No droids. I just want to thank everybody for their enthusiasm and for their passion towards Star Wars and for building an inclusive fan community. May the Force be with you.
Oh my God,
Man,
that radio voice.
I love Matt.
I know, he's such a baller. He really is. We know we're having him on the show in a couple weeks here. Is that next week? It's not next week, is it?
No, I think it. Yes, yeah.
Is it next week?
It is next week.
That's
Oh,
right.
wow.
That's gonna be exciting.
You
He's
heard
got
it
something
here.
big planned for us, but fantastic.
Matt, so Matt, we love you. Matt's been an awesome part of this team for so long now. Obviously with the podcast and with the Cantina of Comics show that he's doing. But his question, everyone: what character from Star Wars, canon or Legends, would best do our actual job?
Ooh, bah. Ooh, bah. Oh man, that's funny. I delivered a baby by myself yesterday, guys.
Whoa,
Sorry to totally take it off the rails. There was the OB attendant couldn't get in there fast enough, and it was just me, nobody else.
You did it.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting. The
So
question is who could do that? I mean,
No droids.
Ooh,
No
bah.
droids.
Ooh, bah.
New droids. Okay.
We don't know why. She's lost the will to live.
I'll pull one. I'm gonna say, if we're thinking about my actor life here, I'm gonna say Zayd from Black
Oh.
Spire.
Of course.
I think would be a tremendous actor, since he basically is anyway. Was it Zayd Kilgrave?
Yeah.
One of those.
Something like that.
Yeah, but he's very flamboyant, very boisterous. So I think he'd be an excellent
It's
actor.
Caliday, isn't it? Caliday.
Caliday? Zayd Caliday. There it is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Well,
I'm going with
I like
Zayd.
that answer. I think, you know what my answer is going to be? It's going to be Ahsoka. And the reason it's going to be
Ooh.
Ahsoka is because she basically put Rex through an MRI and diagnosed him and fixed him
yeah.
in 5
Yeah.
seconds in the last season of the Clone Wars.
That's
Oh
perfect.
man, that's fantastic. I think mine would be that that clone trooper. I have no idea what the name is. It's probably buried deep in the credits of Attack of the Clones. Do you remember when when the gunship is flying towards Dooku or whatever, and they're chasing Dooku, and it rocks or whatever, and Padme falls out of it from 5 stories up and just hits the scene I'm talking about?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and then so she's the scene transition, and Obi-Wan yells at Anakin. He's like, "What would Padme do?" And he's like, "Yeah, you're right. You do it. Okay, that whole thing happens." And then it flashes back to Padme. She's just laying there. She's just laying there, right? She's totally unconscious. And then that clone trooper runs over, and he it's so slow. It's almost in slow motion. But he kneels and takes her hand, and he's like, "Ma'am, are you okay?" And she's just instantly better. Instantly better. She's like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine." She just gets up and they just run away after falling
magical
5
Her
stories.
run in that is the worst.
It's
Watch
so
rewatch
awkward.
when she's long strides.
Yes,
It's so bad.
it's so awkward. I specifically remember it's the first time I was in a theater that everybody laughed at a scene that they obviously were not supposed to laugh at, and I didn't understand it. As a kid,
That's
I was
a bonding moment.
"What's everybody
That's a bonding
laughing at?"
moment.
I don't really get it. It's because it was just so cringy. She just got up after falling 4 stories out of the damn gunship. It's great. Anyway, that's who I would be. Is that he clearly saved her? The clone trooper did.
Right. All right, I like it. I dig it. Jake, who is the teacher?
Well, right off the top of my head, I mean, you think to yourself, okay, well, which Jedi is it? And all that keeps popping into my head is just Mace Windu looking at Anakin going, "Take a seat, young Skywalker." So I think Mace Windu, because the amount of times that I'm standing there and I get a kid stands up and I look at him and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Oh, I just have to throw this away." I'm like, "I'm literally talking about something right now." And they're like, "Can I not just throw this away?" And I'm like, "Take a seat, young whoever it is.
Amazing.
So, I'm gonna say Mace Windu.
We don't discuss Jedi business with civilians.
This is true. Yeah.
All right. I like that. Looking at the chat here, we got a couple answers as well. We got Jose in the chat saying, I guess mine would be Galen Erso since he designed the Death Star. And Jose is a
fantastic.
phenomenal architect. So that makes a ton of sense. Also, Spice Den, as an engineer, says Lothal has roads, so someone had to design them, I guess. So I'm going to be played by a random Lothalian civil engineer. Ooh. Fen101 says, or Jacosta New for Jake, or Jake Asta New.
Ooh. Can I pay the however much I have to pay to change my gamer tag right now and everything?
my God.
My Instagram name, literally
Jake
everything.
Asta New.
I like just the fact that I can look at all the kids now and be like, if it's not in the book, it doesn't exist. And they're just
Absolutely. And then we'll give you an awesome lightsaber gun.
like, yes.
All right, epic. Well,
Even
thank
though
you,
she
Matt.
is taken down by one of her students eventually. Speaking of the
I mean,
comics,
That's true.
So
Well,
Sorry.
maybe that's
It's
how things are
coming.
going to end for you, Jake. We don't
Yeah,
know.
come on, Jake. We
just
we
don't
know.
sorry. Okay.
That's very dark, guys. In this day and age, we can't joke about stuff like that.
Well, other than Jake's imminent demise in the hand of his students, we got books coming out, guys. As a reminder, next month, November 10th, From a Certain Point of View, Empire Strikes Back is coming out. Make sure you get your pre-orders in. And a constant reminder to check out the new release page of Utini for all the upcoming releases. Thank you to Frank, who does a great job keeping track of those. Oh, and thank you, Heather, for the bit. The bits have started flying. That's right. All right, Charles, if you'd be so kind, could you take us through some book reviews? We haven't gotten community book reviews in a while, thanks to our roundtables, but we're putting them back in this episode.
Yeah, it has been a while. I'd be more than happy to kick this off with our very own Spice Den, who reviewed Thrawn Ascendancy Chaos Rising. So we've talked a little bit about that recently. Spice Den gave it 5 stars, and he said, Chaos Rising is quite frankly one of the best Star Wars books I've ever read. Zahn does an incredible job of establishing this new pocket of the galaxy. It feels fleshed out but not rushed, and it leaves room for further development in the rest of the trilogy. The characters are fantastic. Thrawn is enjoyable, as always, as is Aralani. I found the main antagonist to be interesting. However, I wish they would have had a little bit more time to develop. I think my biggest praise of the book is that I'm sad there are only 2 more coming because I love this part of the galaxy so much. So thank you, Spice Den. I think we're probably all on the same page there.
Yeah, for sure. Who's going next? This is your segment, man. I put you in
This
the
is
outline.
my
You're the
segment.
king.
This is
your
this has
segment.
just been made my segment. Okay, all right. Well, who else to choose other than our very own special guest, Mr. Jake Ruddle?
go in and read one of these reviews here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
review
by
number
all means.
2.
All right.
Yeah, look at Paul
So-
Matthews.
We got Paul Matthews, and he is giving Thrawn Ascendancy Chaos Rising 5 stars as well. And he says, oh man, from the moment this one started, I knew it was going to be a fun ride. There was fantastic military action as to be expected with Thrawn. The dive into the family politics was wonderful and in-depth. What I didn't expect was the quite wholesome moments between some of the side characters. Cherie was one of my favorite new characters, and her being so strong and so young felt empowering and encouraging. I loved the story, and I can't wait for more.
Mm.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Jake.
Jake.
Paul.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Thank
and
you.
thank you, Paul. All right.
Yeah.
And Eric, why don't you round us out with our last one? Because Corey's busy with these cameras. He can't multitask that much.
You're doing great, Corey.
Appreciate that.
All right, I'll round it out with Lando, who also reviewed Thrawn Ascendancy Chaos Rising, a little bit of a pattern in this episode. Gave it 5 stars as well, and said, this was my first ever Thrawn book, and I was very impressed. It explored an all-new location with new planets and species that I've never encountered before. That said, it could become hard to follow or understand at some points because of how foreign everything was. I'm sure on a second read, I might find myself loving this even more. I'm very excited for the continuation of this trilogy and can't wait to dive into the first canon Thrawn trilogy.
Mm.
And I really like that, especially because it brings up something that we talk about on the show from time to time, which is the value of rereading. I know everyone's lives are busy. We're all trying to keep up with a bunch of different things, but rereading, especially Star Wars books, I think is becoming more and more helpful as the years go on, because there's just so much stuff crammed in now, especially with Zahn books, that you can't get everything on the first try, right?
That's right.
Yeah, freaking love it. So thank you to you all. And of course, if you want your review read on this show, head over to utini.com, find your book profile, scroll all the way down to the bottom, leave a star rating and the written review, and maybe we'll put it right on this show. All right, we are going to jump into comics here in just a sec. But before we do, I believe we have a nice little ad spot. So Corey, throw that up, and we'll see you all in a couple seconds.
I will be playing Lego Star Wars. I'm gonna die again because I'm scolding you right now. Nothing's happening. Oh! Okay, well now something happened. Oh. Okay. It wasn't lined up to the centimeter. My bad. Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. Hey, I made that. You can't take it. Aw, that's messed up. Stomp on them. Stomp on them till they die.
That was fantastic. Our very own Heather.
Oh,
Excellent.
Our very own
excellent.
Heather on Utini Game Night, which as you all may know is a weekly event we host on this channel. That is Wednesdays. Sometimes it's Fridays, Thursdays. No, not Thursdays. Let's look back. But usually Wednesdays or Fridays. Heather did a great job playing Lego Star Wars, and that just tickled me. Heather, I know you're in the chat. Great job.
Yeah, that was a
You're
good
awesome. All right, folks. You came here for comics. We brought Jake here for comics. We stopped him from teaching for comics. That's what we did here. This is how big this is.
When all my kids come tomorrow and they're like, Mr. Ruddle, you haven't graded any of our things yet, I'm going to be like, well, let me direct you all to the Living Force podcast where we're going to get some serious content today. Find the central idea. See if they can figure out comics. We'll see how long that
that's
goes.
some English
Fantastic.
teacher stuff right there.
I really like that you were talking about the idea of reading things twice, because like I have a handout that we go on that says that it takes 3 times to really, you need to read something 3 times before you can really synthesize what is happening.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Oh, okay, I see what you did there. I'm like, oh my gosh, my mic's cutting out. Like Corey's gonna yell at me. It's a whole big thing, and then it's like, okay, I see what you did there.
Man. Well, I dig it, and one of the things that I like to reread, segue, are Star Wars comics. Since in the last few years, we have gotten more Star Wars comics than we have in quite a while. We got new series coming out all the time, and a little while ago, we did a little catch-up episode where we told people what was going on, and so much has been happening that I decided, you know what? Or we decided, not just me. Come on now, I don't have that kind of power. I do, but I don't use it. I decided we need to talk more about comics. So, Jake, as our guest host here today, I want to ask you, what are some of your favorite recent Star Wars comics and why?
All right. So, I mean, recently, I love the new runs that have been happening. If you're kind of following along with the way that Star Wars comics have kind of been picking up, right after Disney took over Lucasfilm, they started some different runs with some different characters. Darth Vader had his own run, and then they had a run that was just called Star Wars. And the primary focus on that was taking place between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. And it kind of confused people because when I started reading it, confused me because I'm like, okay, Star Wars, this is the Star Wars run. So I was like, is this just the run that of like all of the Star Wars movies as a comic form? And it was mainly it's the comic run that follows the heroes of the original trilogy. So it kind of follows Han, Leia, Luke, and what they were kind of up to. So that went through 75 issues, which was a really good run that filled in the gap of the 3 years that was in between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. And so they restarted that here in 2020. And so if you search around online, you'll normally see it referred to as the Star Wars 2020 run or the 2020 Star Wars run, which is now filling in the gap of what Han and Leia and Luke were up to between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Which is
we do know what Han was up to.
Yeah, well,
No, fair enough.
yeah. I guess I didn't even think about that. Well, they're actually to kind of add to that. We've got a Star Wars run that's going on right now. We have a Darth Vader run that's going on right now. There's a new Dr. Aphra run. There's a new Bounty Hunters run. And the Bounty Hunters run does kind of give some perspective on what Boba Fett was up to, and kind of showing us that Han did not make a direct trip from Bespin to Tatooine. That Boba Fett got a little sidestepped. But in just kind of sticking with the Star Wars run, I mean, it's been really awesome to see that story kind of fleshed out, tied in with, the new canon as a whole, which we really get, a 60-year span worth of stuff to tie into. So the new Star Wars run's been great. Classically, and it's a little cliche, but, I love that Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith run that took place.
So good.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
really
it's
good.
so many people kind of jump into that one, but I'm a sucker for like the movie Easter eggs. I know some people kind of cringe at some of those things, and I think that's maybe why I like the comics so much, is because those tie-ins are so, I guess, obvious. But I like being able to kind of step into that moment, where the movie kind of leaves things not necessarily on a cliffhanger, but it just kind of ends things, and to see what really happened after that and how Vader kind of copes with being who he is now.
Oh yeah.
While
so
it's
good.
still fresh. Yeah, those
Now-
are some of my favorites.
So just to sort of recap, we have right now ongoing. We have a Star Wars line, which is it's a reboot technically, I guess, of the Star Wars line that was the previous Star Wars line. Is that correct?
Yeah,
it's
that's
the same title of Star Wars #1. It's like how they have Amazing Spider-Man #1
right.
is a brand new #1, even though it's been going since the
That's
60s.
right. That's right. So this is they've rebooted Star Wars, the main line, right? So we have Star Wars main line, which now is between
5 and 6.
Yes, between
Mhm.
5 and 6. That's correct.
Mhm.
Okay.
Which Charles Soule's writing.
Yes, that's
Yep.
right. So we have that one. We also have a new Darth Vader line, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have
Greg
Bounty.
Pack is writing.
That's
Which is
right.
incredible.
Yes.
Yeah,
which
it's freaking
I've
awesome.
I've read a little bit of that one. I haven't read much of the new Star Wars line. And then we have the Bounty Hunters line. Do we know how long that's
Mhm.
going to be? Have they said?
No,
It's already going into 10, so it's going to have it's if we're talking volumes the way they've done them in the past, I think it's already like if you subscribe to it, it's already up to having a date for Bounty Hunters #10. So I guess that would take
Yeah.
us at least through 14 of them
Okay.
or 12 of them.
That's fairly
Mhm.
significant. Okay. And then what
Yeah.
else? What else is going right
And then
now?
Afra.
Afra.
And Afra's the
Okay.
other
All
one.
right. So there are four like lines of comics that are ongoing. They always occasionally release some like short runs of stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't think we've had any of those in a little bit, right?
You
Not
haven't had a
since
limited
Rise of
series in a
Kylo
hot
Ren.
minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rise of Kylo Ren was the last one. You're
That's
right.
That's
Yep.
right. And I did get that one. I think I have the entire print line of The Rise of Kylo Ren. Pretty sure I do.
Yeah, but they've all been pretty solid. I gotta say, these ones that I've read. I want to take a quick sidebar. John Dutch Vander in the chat asked me if I'm wearing a Michael Irvin or a Des Bryant jersey. Neither, my good sir. This is a CeeDee Lamb jersey. I went all in on the rookie this year. So to be an audio podcast, that's what I look like tonight. All right. Anyway, thanks, John. Go Cowboys.
This is
Let's
what
hope we
they
beat the
look like.
Cardinals.
Some of them look different.
There it is, Star Wars. But yeah, I agree, Jake. I've been really loving, especially I'm gonna say this Star Wars run and Vader currently.
Yeah.
The Star Wars run by Soul, unsurprisingly, honestly, is really getting into a couple High Republic tie-ins. Like he's
Mhm.
really having some fun now that it's been announced. Like they talk about the old Starlight Beacon. And there was an issue where we found an
Yeah.
older lightsaber. Like there's stuff now that because Soul obviously knows more than basically
Right.
anyone other than 5 people in the world what's going on in the High Republic, he can sprinkle those in. So it's been super fun. And
I-
personally, go ahead, Jake.
Okay, well, I was going to say, I think that what's really, for people who may have been a little reluctant or maybe, weren't as gung-ho about, the Disney takeover and a lot of the things kind of seemed really obscure. I think right now that we've had these runs that took place the first couple of years, because the last couple, there was a character that popped up from Rebels in the last,
Yeah.
in the Star Wars run that I think we're really beginning now to see some of these tie-ins that don't seem so like forced so much as they're natural tie-ins with things, and the whole story's kind of coming together. And I think we all knew that it would take time, but we're finally kind of getting to the point where, you know, it's, you get excited to see some of these characters saying, rather than like, wait, why is this person here? So, and I think that's, you know, with the High Republic right now, obviously, you know, we get a little bit of these cameos and stuff like that are kind of piquing our interest for what's to come. But, you know, for me, it just kind of, you know, ties it all in better late as part of the experience.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the great things about Legends, right? I mean, you couldn't get amazing series like Legacy of the Force and the New Jedi Order with all these hundreds of characters if you didn't have the years to build them. Like you couldn't build up Rogue Squadron until you had all the X-Wing books to then put them in the NJO and things like that. So we are seeing those in the comics now. Like in the Charles Soule comic, again, at this point, I think we probably should have started with this. There will be mild spoilers for these runs going on. We're not going to try to take away anything. Like Jake didn't mention which character from Rebels is in. That was kind of a indicative of where we're trying to go. But I will say the Charles Soule Star Wars run also has like Shara Bay and Kes Dameron in it, the first couple issues, because now the Poe Dameron comic and Poe Dameron Freefall and things like that have built up those characters individually. So now they can naturally be a part of the story. And I think that's a really cool thing comics can especially do, because like you were saying, Jake, as a visual medium, it can really tie into the films even more than some novels, because it can show you the literal shot at the end of Empire and then pan over to this comic panel. So like you're right there. Like we know Luke was missing an arm because in the first panel of the first comic of the new Star Wars run, he's sitting getting like the stub taken care of. And you're like, oh, got it.
Yeah.
I'm in it right now. And then as the characters come in from all these different mediums, it really creates a really cohesive world, which is what I also want to talk about that Darth Vader run. I would say, guys, no single Star Wars piece of content in the last 6 months, perhaps, has caused more like stir in our Slack than the Darth Vader comic. Like whenever Darth Vader comes up on a Wednesday, there's always like one Slack message with like 60 replies to it with people not wanting to spoil. It's wild how impactful this run has been, right? I mean, Darth Vader's always good, but there's been something about Greg Pak's issues that have said it above.
Can we talk about what it is?
There's nobody get around this one.
Yeah, obviously, guys, if you're planning on jumping into the comics, major kind of spoilers ahead, everyone.
I guess we'll just say that I'll start it and you guys can take it.
You can't really have a discussion without really talking about.
I think this was the first time that we really had an impactful reference to Padme and the fact that the impact that Padme had on Anakin, the man behind the mask,
right,
within original trilogy content.
Right. And we kind of there's been a lot sort of stories sort of surrounding this too and other stuff. Like this was a big deal in the Afra audio drama, right? Like kind of working on tracking down what happened to Padme. Like, did she actually die? Like, did he actually kill her? Like, what actually happened? And that's kind of the big theme of the Vader comic, right? Is like, like he's sort of searching that out. And I mean, I've not even read the whole series, but the stuff that you guys have screenshotted into our Slack channel is like, holy shit! Like, it looks, it's really top notch stuff.
And like they're using a comic to bring in stuff not only from the films but also from the books, like from Queen's Peril earlier this year and Queen's Shadow. E.K. Johnson's Padme books introduced us to Tanra, right? Captain Tanra is a main character that hooked up with Sabe a bunch, and now Tanra came back in the Vader comic with Sabe and Irte and Sasha. Like all the handmaidens that we read about in a book earlier this year showed up in a comic as a fighting force. With Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Like
incredible.
You would never I think like to me what it really is doing, you know, I grew up loving the Phantom Menace because I grew up, I mean that was the one that came out when I was
our
like,
time, baby.
Yeah. But like now you can't watch those movies now without seeing like those characters even in the background, which is like, you know, a cornerstone of Star Wars, that little background character over there has this giant backstory. But now, I mean, you watch, you know, anytime I ever see Sabe on screen now. I mean, it was, even though it was Keira Knightley at the time and she's become this big movie star, like it's still a little inkling of me hopes that one day, like in The Mandalorian or something, Keira Knightley will show up somewhere. But I can't watch that like movie now without looking at all those different characters and just thinking about, where they're going to be. That little boy is going to turn into this, and then they are going to be with them. It just it gives so much more weight to something.
And Jake, I want to ask you something as a teacher, honestly, because I'll feel like comics and graphic novels as a whole, the last couple of years have really started to get a little more, for lack of a better phrase, respect in both the educational realm and kind of the world as a whole. And whether you want to blame the MCU, whether you want to say about things like the Watchmen TV series or whatever it is, there seems to be this new wave of appreciation for comics. Have you found that to be true from like an academic perspective?
Yes, I don't specifically teach any graphic novels. I know that one of the teachers that I've worked with in the past has done Persepolis as a graphic novel. Yeah. And I Am Malala, I think, is maybe one of the graphic novels. But I think the depth that we're getting a lot with the content. You can look at some older different things like that, but the visual side of it and looking at the comics is like a piece of art. I think has elevated a little bit in recent years. I think comics have kind of a really bad rep because we just think of comic culture as, Batman, Superman, go to the comic book store, just kind of the superhero stories. That's the connotation with the comic book. But I think is more classic literature gets kind of revamped into graphic novels. I think that's opened up a lot of the conversation because as a teacher, I mean, I'm excited when a kid reads, and that's one of the hardest things right now is just getting a kid to read anything. And so it's one of those things where as the medium changes, the fact that they have something in front of them where they're still able to kind of ask some questions about, what might the message be of this? How might this character change and teach me a lesson? That's what I'm happy about. And so, as we kind of get more into the graphic novel phase of things, like I don't think it's ever going to replace the literature, but there's a lot to be said for it. Where it used to be kind of a scoff at like, oh, well, that's not the true literature. It's not so much about literature anymore, so much as it's about, understanding a message.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, because they do bring a message through storytelling, right? That's all books are. It's all graphic novels are. It's all movies, TV shows. Like, you're telling a story.
Yeah.
And I think that the comics, especially bringing it back to Star Wars comics, have been really great about introducing people to different facets of the universe. Like, okay, maybe you don't want to read this particular novel about this particular character because you don't really love doing that. Oh, but a comic, great. That's like a smaller time commitment. Frankly, we talked earlier. It's hard to find time to read. And, it's a visual. I can see Luke. Oh, this happens right after Empire. And it kind of brings you in. And they can really expand what they can do. And it also gives, like, artists another, arena in which to paint pictures, quite literally, to see what's been happening. Now, I want to ask all you guys, next year, we have 2 big comic releases coming up, right? We got the High Republic from Marvel, and then we have the High Republic Adventures from IDW, which means, let's see here. If we count the rest of the books, 2 out of the 5 first releases of the High Republic are comics, and they are said to be very important and to be a huge part of it. What do you think this says about the future of Star Wars publishing, that they're launching a brand new era with 2 simultaneous comic series along with 3 books?
I mean, I think it tells us that they're considering both to be equally relatively important, for the stories that they're trying to tell. It's kind of what we were just talking about, that, the world as a whole is kind of taking comics and graphic novels more seriously. And I think part of the reason that we're able to do that is because we're equating them, from a publishing standpoint. So we see that they're willing to put out, brand new eras with comic books like this, with graphic novels like this. I mean, that tells me as a consumer that there's something important in these comics. And generally there is in Star Wars. That, certainly since Disney's taken over and has kind of been in charge of everything, none of these comics are really throwaway. Like there's fun,
Right.
important moments in all of them. And so,
Yeah.
if that's anything to go off of, the point is, hey, you should be paying attention to these.
Yeah.
I think part of it too, this is really, I think, their moment of saying, like, they want people to be invested into the full experience. Like the High Republic has kind of been Disney and Lucasfilm Publishing's way of saying, like, this is our clean slate. We want to not completely forget the old stories, but this is where this is their chance to kind of open things up. And before, I think it was always kind of like, you can read this book and this comic may supplement it, or, this comic may be kind of a primary story, and then you may see one of these characters later. But I think this is really their first chance to have everything laid out and say, to get this full experience, you have to be open to the adult novels, to the middle grade novels, to the young adult, to the comics. To get everything as one picture, it's, you can't, I don't want to say you can't pick just one, but they're really trying to get people to be open to this idea that, you can start from scratch in all of the mediums and get the full experience.
It's
Jake,
a great
that's
point.
really, yeah, that's an awesome point, because I love how you also brought up the middle grade novel thing, because we at Utini, I feel like we're always fighting the battle of telling people, hey, young adult isn't just for kids.
Yeah.
Middle grade now is like younger quote unquote literature or comics or whatever. They're not just for younger readers. There's value to be found. And that's a great point. The High Republic really is kind of forcing people to understand that, like, hey, if your big adult brain wants all the parts of this, there's a middle grade novel that's going to be important. And just because it can also be read by a 6th grader or 7th grader doesn't mean it's lesser for you.
Right.
And I find that to be really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the idea that, like, there's hard-hitting sort of like content inside of the Star Wars comics is not a super new idea. I mean, like the Poe Dameron comics is really the first one that stands out in my mind, that like there was really key stories connected to the films, that storytelling that wasn't told in any
Snap
other
is
medium.
married. We found that out.
Right, exactly. And there's like big stuff in there. So like, when we're talking about, to answer your question that you asked earlier, Eric, like what are our thoughts on this kind of new series that's coming out, is like, I mean, you kind of have to get it to participate in it, particularly something that's this new and massive as the High Republic. I'm absolutely going to try to pick this one up. Like, just because it's going to be such an important part of the entire story and how it all fits together. I mean, I don't see how you could digest the High Republic without looking at the comic as well.
Yeah, it's funny too, because we look back at like Shadows of the Empire, right? And it was like this multimedia project back in Legends, and we had the book, and we had the video game, and we had the soundtrack and all this stuff, right? But now, like, everything is kind of like that.
Yeah.
Like, there's comics that tie into this. There's a book that ties into this. Like, I don't know. There's an audio book with like exclusive soundtrack, that's in the background playing for that. Like, everything now is a multimedia experience, and to get that full experience, you really have to be willing to try out different types of media.
Yeah.
And isn't that kind of what we've been asking for, right? Like, ever since canon started with Star Wars, we've been like, oh, the books are always just a little bit cooler when there's something from a comic added, or when there's a character from a film, or like Jake, what you were saying, those Easter eggs, right? There's a reason at the end of every roundtable, Charles, you put together those Easter eggs, because we love that. That's so uniquely Star Wars, and it's something that, we should be able to take advantage of. And with something like the High Republic saying, hey, this IDW Adventures comic is going to have something that impacts Charles Soule's Light of the Jedi novel, and like all these different parts, I think make it the first true experiment of what Star Wars canon is capable of. I mean,
and I think too, with like what's really great about the High Republic as a whole is like, we always talk about like what's so great about Star Wars is that it's this big universe. There's a place for everybody, but we've always kind of seen the universe within the frame of, the Empire and the Rebellion, and I mean, and Darth Vader and his family, the Skywalkers being the central figure of that. And I think this is really what it's going to show us. This is what's going to show us that you can be in this universe and experience Star Wars stories without the Empire, and with a very different Republic than we know. And if you think about it in terms of, you'll have art and things like that that'll pop up, but like the comics here are truly what's going to be our visual for this world. You know, we're not
setting
going to
up a brand
have
new
a movie.
aesthetic.
Yeah,
that's
we're
a
not
good
going to
point.
have a movie. We're not
That's a
going to
very
have.
good
I mean, we
point.
may eventually, but the only vision. I mean, I like sometimes whenever I liked whenever I could read different things around The Force Awakens, and we talk about Snap or Poe or all those different types of things, and I could go into the comic and see what that character
Right.
looked like or something
Yep.
like that, or I know what the Carrion Spike looks like as Tarkin's ship
Right.
because I've seen it.
Or like, I mean, a lot of people like use Wikipedia too, like when they're like reading and stuff. And it's, a lot of the images that are in Wikipedia have been pulled straight out of the comics. That's where that artwork comes from. That's a really good point. I've not even thought about of like this will be like the creator's imagination of what the old, what the High Republic looks like. That's gonna be awesome. I can't.
I
wait
mean,
for
you think about it when we had that that High Republic announcement. Remember when they had that huge press conference? They didn't just say here are the authors. They debuted a ton of artwork.
Yeah,
they
they
say,
did.
This is what the era looks like.
Right.
And you make a great point, Jake. I remember back when I was in high school, and honestly, I still do this sometimes. If I read a new book, sometimes I'd go online and like Tumblr or something, and people would put up like fan casts, right?
Oh,
And I'm like, oh, cool. So
I
now,
have folders on my computer. I'll save the picture to people.
We did it for Alphabet Squadron. I mean, we set a
That's right.
squadron, and now like, cool, I get to have that in my head. But now, like, I know what Trennis looks like in the High Republic because Kevin Scott wrote that character, and now it has been drawn.
Yeah.
And now, the architecture, the colors of the world are going to be established in comics, and we get to bring that in to the novels, and I think that's so freaking cool.
I have like a picture of Josh Hutcherson that's my Joff Sea Striker, and my Priyanka Chopra is a picture, and the caption is literally like Greer Sonal.
Brilliant.
But I have Michael Fassbender is a Tumblr picture of the Ransom Casterfo, and
Ooh.
Fantastic.
Ooh. And I think that's something so cool because as the world gets more visual, like we are such a visual world now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the way that people learn or people absorb, that it just makes it so much cooler. And I also gotta say, today even as we're recording this, a lot of comics became a lot more accessible because Marvel just announced a really cool new initiative. Now, a lot of you may know about Marvel Unlimited, which is their essentially Netflix model of comics where you pay a monthly fee and you get access to every single Marvel published comic that's 6 months old or older. Like talking from the beginning Spider-Man days all the way till 6 months ago. Well, today, Marvel announced that 6 month window has now become 3 months. So now you have to wait half the time that you did if that's how you're consuming comics. Like you don't really care about being in the daily conversations or the monthly talks about comics. That's totally fine. Or some people that wait for trades. Now, if you just wait 3 months, you can pay so much less for your Star Wars comics. And I think that their decision to do this now before the High Republic starts is frankly brilliant because comics get expensive.
Absolutely is. Yeah, I was gonna ask you guys this is like what do you think the biggest barriers to entry are when it comes to comics? Because like I find comics to be this thing that I like really want to try to get into, but every single time I try to give it like a real shot, I just can't do it. And I don't really know what it is about it. It's like I know Eric, like so you buy all your comics individually on Comixology, right? And they cost the full price in digital edition still, right?
Yep.
And I just cannot bring myself to do it. I cannot bring myself to pay a full price for a digital product when the equivalent is a paper product I can hold in my hand and have in a box forever and like storage on my shelf and display it and all that kind of stuff. I can't make myself do it. So for me, that's one of the barriers to entry is the cost of the digital stuff is still as expensive as the paper stuff, and it's not an equivalent product in my opinion at all. So
well, and that's what people had talked about for years and years. Because when I was in college, I bought physical comics. Like weekly, I'd go to the shop and I picked up my physical floppy copies. Yeah. And I had long box after long, like these giant cardboard boxes. If you're a comics collector, you know there's these cardboard boxes. And I just filled them. And then, but honestly, that became a barrier because then I had these random white cardboard boxes in my apartment that was too small anyway.
Sure.
So the Comixology, I actually switched because it was easier to read them that way. But I do think that the price of comics, you're saying, is a decent barrier to entry, which is why I think things like Marvel Unlimited, like Comixology Unlimited. There's a similar.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting
thing are
we're
gonna
getting
be really
closer.
cool.
The subscription model is absolutely the way that this industry is going to have to be move forward. And like, I can tell you from my limited experience when we were selling book boxes back in the day, I fought pretty hard to try to get comics as an option for the subscription boxes and stuff. And man, I got to tell you, the comic industry is behind the times. Holy smokes!
There's one big publisher, Diamond, and they control all of it.
It's absolutely atrocious. And like, there's not a single positive Yelp review for Diamond. Let's just leave it at that. Like literally everybody hates them. Like every comic book company hates them. All the comic book shops hate them. They're a pain to deal with. They send you destroyed copies and don't reimburse you for it. It's like they're a crappy monopolistic company. It really sucks. And I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons. The existence of Diamond is probably one of the biggest reasons that we are kind of like behind the times a little bit. But I just found it really frustrating trying to deal with anybody around the comics. Nobody can tell you anything. You have to like get your orders in at certain times. It's very complex even from the company perspective. So, when I see something like this, like 3 months is not that bad. Like 3 months is pretty good. And it's closer if this will boost the sales of comics. Like if a lot of people like sign up for Marvel Unlimited, which I might seriously consider doing that now, actually. If a lot of people sign up for that, maybe we'll eventually see this, and I think we will at some point, whether or not it happens in the next 10 years or in our lifetime or whatever, eventually we're going to have a pure subscription model for comics. If Marvel Unlimited had a monthly fee that I could pay, even if it was kind of pricey, like $20 or $30, and I could just get all of the newest stuff that they release, I would absolutely do that. So as a company, you have to weigh that. It's like how the hell does Netflix afford to make their subscription like $7 for the lowest one? Then they can produce.
Well, I think that one's purely because the movie watching audience versus the comic book reading audience is a little bigger.
But still,
I
think
that's the way to go.
It's a pure numbers game when it comes to business, right? Like Netflix knows that they can spend a Game of Thrones. Here, Disney Plus is a better example. Knows that they can spend a Game of Thrones budget, expense on The Mandalorian because enough people are going to buy that flimsy little $7 subscription. It'll pay for itself, right? So some version of that model has to exist for the comic industry too. Like,
I think that's what they're doing now with Marvel Unlimited is that as long as you don't mind the 3-month waiting period, because let's be honest, a lot of people with Star Wars books, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably read a lot of Star Wars books, but you may not read every single new release within the first month that it's released. We look at our podcast numbers, our roundtables are some of my favorite episodes we do, but they don't always get the listen numbers because some people wait and some people haven't read the book yet.
Yeah.
So if you have a comic and it's like, okay, it came out 3 months ago,
right,
but I could get around to it anyway, you can save a ton of money. I'm seeing a bunch of people in the chat talking about us. Again, John Dutch Vander makes a good point. It is 3 months of FOMO. So if you want to be on the Twitter conversation,
that's true.
It's kind of the price for that. A side note.
Well, I was going to say just real quick, I think that like for anybody starting, this is fantastic. I wish that for me, I probably put it off, and I kind of agree with Corey in the sense that it's like I hate having to pay $3.99 a month for a comic that I just have to turn right back around, and I know I'm going to get the trade paperback for my my shelf. But you kind of hit that moment of like I got to the point where I had read everything. All the new canon stuff. I'd read everything. And I think there are some things that I would be like, I think, I'm really into the Star Wars and the Vader right now. I think I could put off the Bounty Hunters and the Afra just for now because I want to know what's going on. But the other two are hard. But then, like you said, you get to that point where, for somebody starting out or anybody who's listening to this and thinking like, I wouldn't even know where to start. That's got your name written all over it.
Yeah.
And
Marvel Unlimited, just even at surface level, like forget about the whole like 3-6 month waiting period, whatever. Marvel Unlimited looks like an incredible value. Like just
it's like
looking
30,000
at
comics.
Looking at the homepage, the big text at the top of the page to start your 7-day trial and get access to over 28,000 digital comics. Like that's like pretty impressive. Like Yeah. So I think this is the way to do it. Like if there's ever been a good way to kind of like jump into comics for the first time, like I think this is a fantastic solution. That's always my biggest problem with Marvel Unlimited, and why I've never done it before, is because 6 months is almost too far away from the conversation to me.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and also you can even balance it, like what Jake's saying. If you're someone that says, okay, I want to spend between 20 and 30 bucks a month on comics, if I can find that in my budget, that's Marvel Unlimited plus 2 like monthly comics.
Right.
So
Yeah.
maybe you pick 1 or 2 you want to stay current on,
yeah.
and then the rest of them get them as they come out.
Yeah.
You know, so I think there's definitely a balance act, which actually brings me to a point I want to ask you guys. Real quick before I do though, I saw in the chat, we forgot to mention, someone in the Utini family has a birthday today. It's Jared Mays.
That's
Happy
right.
birthday, buddy!
Yeah,
Our
happy
very own
birthday.
Jedi pastor. So I'll show you. Happy birthday, man! Hope you're having a great day. Next, I want to ask y'all, as we kind of wind up our comics talk here, we've had a couple series like the Poe Dameron comic, like Darth Vader, Dr. Aphra, all these singular character focused series. If you guys could pick one character, any era, to get their own comic series, now it can be ongoing or it can be limited. Who do you want in this visual medium? Who do you think would be
Ooh,
really fun?
I have a gut reaction. I'm just going with it.
Do it.
I want a Tarkin comic.
Yeah.
That would be
okay.
really, really interesting to see. So, like, we ended up talking about Tarkin briefly on Lightspeed Skipping when I picked the books out, and it got me in this weird Tarkin mood. And I would
You love Tarkin.
I
man.
do. I love Tarkin. There's something about his pure calculating evil that I just love.
Oh, he's a great character.
It
Let's be
really
clear.
is.
All right. I like that. Also, thank you, Jared, for the happy birthday to me on Thursday in the chat. I appreciate you.
Happy early
Go
birthday,
to
Eric.
Charles first.
All right, Charles, what
first?
do you got? Give Jake some time.
I think I would love to see a Quinlan Voss comic
Ooh,
because
that's fun.
he's such an interesting person to look at. You know, very dynamic, action-oriented character. So I think there'd be some great panels there that I can envision. And you know, he's got a great story in Dark Disciple, and I think we could either build on his story before or after. So
Sure. And especially with his like sense memory stuff, you could probably do really weird stuff with the art. Like make
Yeah.
it really really trippy. I think that'd be cool. Again, when you let comic artists just kind of go a little nuts, I think that would be fun.
Yeah.
Here, I'll give you one more sec, Jake. I'm gonna go in and say I want a Rogue Squadron comic. Because I think just seeing all the ships in flight is always so fun and kinetic on the page. And to be clear, this could be any ship squadron. So whether these are like Naboo Starfighter Corps, that'd be great. X-wings, TIE Fighter, whatever you want to be. I would love that.
can we
I would
talk
love
about the bit war that's happening as well?
I'm
Y'all
digging it.
notice this?
Jose and Heather just threw me a bunch of bits for my birthday, so I
But they
appreciate
keep
y'all.
they keep raising each other like this is like they're gambling. Like they're giving the exact amount of bits that the last person did.
Yeah.
Also, I want to shout out here as the comments are flying up, which I love. Jared made a good point. There are tons of Quinlan Voss comics and Legends.
That's true.
He does show up quite a bit there. So if you're a little behind on your Legends reading like me, I actually use the comics as a way to kind of some of the epic collections, which we have talked about in Jake's Ultimate Comics video and on a couple articles on utini.com. Some of the Legends epic collections are great ways to get a ton of Legends story at a low price point. So
Yeah, that's very true. And man, the old Dark Horse comics, in my opinion, my limited comic knowledge opinion, the Star Wars Dark Horse comics are like the perfect balance of really epic artwork and really good storytelling. Like that, the entire era that Dark Horse had the Star Wars comics is a very special time, I think, in Star Wars history. Like,
Yeah.
that
no
stuff is
question.
really, really good. Like the Old Republic
Yeah.
stuff is utterly fantastic. Like, there's some really hard hitting stuff in those epic collections. Like when we used to get them and ship them out to people, I don't have but a couple of the epic collections on my shelf. And when we used to get them and ship them out, I would like flip through them and stuff. And I would find myself like I couldn't open them because if I opened them up, I'd want to read it for like 40 minutes, right? So, and they're really, really good. The epic collections are really a fantastic way to collect some of the old stuff too. And I bet I guess all that is in Marvel Unlimited. Is that correct? I mean,
yeah, it should be
that's
now. I think they got
crazy.
the license.
I'm gonna
Or
get a
Comixology
trial
Unlimited, if
like
not.
right now. Like I'm gonna do it.
It worked. And we don't even have a promo. That's not even an ad. This is just a cool deal.
Now I need to see if we can find an affiliate program. Does Marvel Unlimited have an affiliate program?
Well, we'll see. Well, Corey's figuring out a way to make more money. Jake, what about you? What about you?
Okay, so my first gut reaction was, and I guess it may tie into the bounty hunter. It was Bausch to like figure out to kind of fill that.
Cool.
What was this? Because I feel like it was a character that. Well, okay, so one, if you watch the Forces of Destiny shorts, technically it's canon how Leia gets the Bausch armor. There's that story is told. But two, like it always was kind of understood to me that everyone knew who Bausch was whenever Bausch showed up at Jabba's palace. And so, if it's one of those famous bounties, so that was kind of like a Bausch Adventures. The second thing, I went off on a tangent here. My limited series is like a 5-issue run, each one of them doing a specific story about one of the officers in the Empire. So like one on Piet, one on Ozzel, which we get some Ozzel in the Star Wars run. Kind of what he was up to up until the event.
Middle management Empire stuff is great though. I love those guys.
Moff Jerjerrod is referenced in like the Tarkin novel and Admiral Mahdi, and we get a lot of Yularen and that kind of stuff. But just so that was my limited series, and then my just total run is just like in a rebel soldier that's just like like somebody kind of like a Lost Stars concept of seeing everything from the outside, kind of thing. I think in a comic run that would be kind of cool, like either joining the rebellion or somebody kind of jumping in to see it from which I think that was kind of there's always kind of been a scratch the surface of those stories being told, like when they were talking about the underworld thing with Coruscant and the outside looking in characters. I'd just like to see that, be followed through with.
Yeah, that'd be dope. I'll add one more, only because we kind of saw it. We had a tease in the Rise of Kylo Ren. I want Luke's Jedi Academy.
Oh yeah.
Because we saw the little flashbacks, and I'm like, oh my god, give me 84,000 pages of this right now.
Yeah.
Because it's so serene and beautiful looking in the artwork.
I think that's there. I think that's gonna be there. Like I've kind of talked about that.
It's
like it's like I mean just the whole, like somebody was talking about that. It might have been in the Slack or whatever, but like it was just Luke's absence. Like I think it's they're just waiting for the moment.
Yep.
Like it's gonna be there. It's just time. When's the right time?
100%
for sure.
And when it does come, everyone, of course we'll be telling you all about it here on Living Forest naturally. As we end our comic segment here, I want to give one more little boost to a weekly show that we have on our YouTube channel called The Cantina of Comics. Our very own Matt Davenport. You'll remember him from Patron of the Week about 20 minutes ago. Matt is he hosts a show every week with his amazing wife. They make a cocktail. They talk about comics. Sometimes they have special guests like our very own Meg Dowell, who was on the last episode. So go ahead and check that out. If you haven't been to the Utini YouTube channel in a while, you got to check that out for all your comics needs. All right. We promised you reveals at the top of this show for some Patreon things. So we want to catch you up on a couple things that's going on in Utini land. First of all, Utini Game Night is still going every single week. Make sure you keep on this Twitch channel and see who's playing when. Legends Look Back is still going every single Thursday night at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time now. Hosted by our very own birthday boy, Jedi Pastor Jared Mays. So and Freddie C, of course, every week. So be sure you go on that. They're in their Thrawn year time lately, talking about all things Legends Thrawn. So go ahead, jump into there. The Conj Book Club is going every Saturday. They are currently going through Dark Disciple. That is Adam. That is Timothy. That is I think we can announce this, right? The recently engaged Patrick. Congratulations. Our team member that got engaged last Saturday. Congrats, man. So happy for you. You guys are killing it going through Dark Disciple. And November will be, Charles, one of your favorite books, Kenobi. So everyone be sure to check that out.
You will find me there.
A weekly basis, a weekly book club. Check that out in the Discord. Patreon. We got tons of Patreon stuff going on. Lightspeed skipping. We just had another episode this week. Should I tell you? I'm not gonna tell you what we did. We did I Jedi, the episode before last, but we had a lot of fun. That was me, Jared, Meg, and Heather talking about a random Star Wars book. Had a lot of fun there. Me and Charlie are still going through season 2 of Rebels on the Ghost Crew, going every other Wednesday. Corey,
Yes.
if you would be so kind, my friend, tell everyone what we are doing on October 30th for our lovely patrons.
Yes. So, last week I think we were doing it next week, but this week we're doing it the next week. So, not confusing at all, right? So, long story short, we tried to plan the event, and then I realized I had a wedding. So, yeah, it was definitely my fault. But we announced it live on the show, and then totally realized that I had a wedding. So, anyway, we've changed it around now. Night at the Opera. It is happening Friday, October 30th. This is a quarterly-ish Patreon party that we have where we all get together and we hang out and we watch some kind of movie or something like that. And on October 30th at 7:30 p.m. we're gonna start, and we're gonna watch a couple episodes of The Mandalorian. I know we will probably have all gotten up early and watched The Mandalorian early that morning, like for the first episode. I'm definitely gonna do that.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So I'll have already seen the first episode, but it'll be cool. We'll kind of talk about some of the. Maybe we'll watch like 2 or 3 of the key episodes of The Mandalorian and kind of talk about like recap it a little bit and how it maybe tie into the second season. So it's gonna be a good fun time. We also have a fun kind of addition to this. I think we're going to try to work out. I've not even talked to you guys about this on the show.
Ooh, a reveal for us.
Yeah, a reveal for you guys too. Last week, I discovered a really cool app called Gather Town, which is basically basically an online service where it's a little like 32-bit. Looks like an old Pokemon video game or something like that. But you can like kind of design your own space, and you pop in there with a little character, and whenever 2 characters get close enough to each other, it pops up like a video chat screen, like a Zoom call. So I used that to create a virtual Utini office based on a Star Wars RPG. RPG map of kind of like the Jedi Temple. So we have like a virtual office, and I think we're gonna like Jose and me have been talking, and he's gonna take like an opera house, like an RPG map, and like modify it so it looks a little more Star Warsy and Utini themed, and we're gonna make it a room off of our office, so you can visit the Utini office and visit the opera house. And I'm gonna run the Night at the Opera out of the software. I already decided I'm gonna do it, and I already have the technical stuff figured out. Believe it or not, like I know exactly how it's gonna work.
Okay.
Like it's gonna be a lot of fun. So you can visit the Utini office, and we'll all go to the theater together. And I think I'll have my little character go up on stage, and my video will be the Mandalorian, and I can send it to you guys like that. So it's gonna be fun, a fun little goofy experience, and we've really enjoyed playing around with the software. It looks like a lot of fun. So.
And this will be for our Inquisitorious patrons and above.
Yeah.
Get the Night in the Opera perk. So for
$10.
all this stuff too, yeah,
That's
it's
the
$10 a
$10.
month. And also make sure you are, even if you're not a patron and you want to know what's going on, make sure you're on our email list. If you go to utini.com, it's the pop-up that jumps up. Add your email to this.
Yeah.
Our buddy Tyler puts a lot of work into the monthly, sometimes more than monthly, Utini emails. So just keep your eye on your emails. And if you're a patron, you will be getting further information from Timothy, our Patreon manager.
Yeah.
And we look forward to seeing you all at the Night of the Opera event.
Yeah, great time to jump into Patreon for the first time. If you just want to kind of maybe test it out for once, it's like maybe kind of look at it like a $10 movie ticket, right? Like you can come hang out with us for Night at the Opera.
And we are $9 away.
Oh my God!
From Corey reading I Jedi.
I'm just kidding.
One new patron.
Just kidding. Don't come become a patron. I don't want to read I Jedi. I don't want that.
You could watch The Mandalorian with all of us, and you could unlock the next Patreon perk
God.
all in one go. So patreon.com/Utini. Keep your eyes on your emails. All right, last announcement on this show. We have a new show coming on October 30th as well to your Patreon feeds called Calf Faves. That's right, Calf Faves, starring Meg Dowell and Heather Goldman, who are going to be talking all about some of their favorite things in Star Wars from their phenomenal perspectives. They've been working on this show for a while. We've been wanting to spice up our Patreon with some new shows there. So at the end of the month, you are going to get the Night at the Opera event. You're going to get the new Calf Faves podcast with Heather and Meg. And because it's Mandalorian season, Bounty Hunt's coming back. So there's never been a better time to become a Patreon of Utini. I have no idea how we're going to record all this content, but we're contractually obligated to. So it's going to happen. And on that note, my friends, that is going to do it for tonight's episode of The Living Force.